on loss as well, reference your uni new freshers that don't know any other, don't know the clubs, don't know all of that. They can't really appreciate something that they have never had. So they're not really at a loss. But I think sometimes a lot of negative emotions and feelings are triggered by a sense of loss. If you're
Hmm.
going through a breakup, someone will lose, someone will feel they've lost. And that plays a lot on the mind. It really does. It plays a lot on the emotions. It, even breeds negative emotions. It could be right down to even like, say you placed a bet and your horse didn't win, it lost, or your football team didn't win, they lost, and you then lost quite an amount of money or whatever you bet. That could trigger, a impulse feeling of, I can't live with this loss. Definitely. It's something to
I
consider.
think
So,
I think as well, suicide, it's something that there's so many different reasons as to why people, you know, choose that route. You know, I've read so many articles during lockdown of people that have lost their businesses, that have committed suicide. People, feel like they can't provide for their family, so they just feel there's no way out, and they just can't carry on every day worrying and struggling. People with debt, people with gambling issues, drug addiction, there's just, and then you come back to people who are lonely, people who feel so sad in themselves,
like
even if
you
you
could have
think
it all
that,
and still feel lonely.
yeah, 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 absolutely,
You're not losing
absolutely.
anything, but you just feel alone. Yeah.
No, yeah, yeah, yeah,
I think I
and
mentioned
it's
earlier in another episode on, I think it's the coronavirus. So if you haven't listened to that one, make sure you go and listen to it. But when you walk through London, I was walked through it a few months ago. There are all these smaller shops that aren't the big brands, not a big chain. They're all boarded up. They haven't been open for nearly a year. And you're thinking, how on earth are you surviving paying rent in London, which is probably one of the most expensive places to live in the UK? And
yeah.
it just goes to show how tough the times are really getting. But linking back to the suicide in Japan, obviously it's completely different culture out there and different things going on. Still a global pandemic, but I think one thing that I'd like to address, study at uni slightly, is the sweatshops in Japan and China. So
Hmm.
I don't know if you know what they are, but the big corporations, Nike, Adidas, Apple, they open up a factory out in an Asian country. The main place is China, but there are a few in Japan as well. And it's basically slavery. It's just cheap labor conditions. You can watch documentaries on it. There's loads. They get paid
I've seen
peanuts.
some.
Working conditions, they barely, like, they're sleeping on top of each other, and they've got these massive stories and people jumping off the side of these factories. So do you know what the big corporations did? They didn't shut them down. They put suicide netting across the side. And it just goes to
Gosh.
show that, I mean, I'm guilty of it. I do have an iPhone, but it costs, I think the numbers they said, I think for an iPhone 10, it costs them about £40 to make, and then they sell it for about 800.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get into a conversation about exploitation of human rights and stuff on this episode, but I think,
Mm.
guys, it would be a really good one for another episode. And if that interests you, then let us know. Please say, yeah, we want an episode on that, and then we will endeavor to put an episode on that. I think you're right there, Lucas, with a lot of these big corporate companies. Who make huge amounts of profit. With the sun, though, whenever the sun shines, somewhere there's always shade.
Hmm.
And a human nature normally tends to be looking at the sun. We like the sun. It's the giver of life. This is what I mean. Like, where there is light, there is always shade. And I think this conversation is us exploring the shade. Maybe it's time to change the narrative. Yeah, with all the good, look at all the good, look at all the good. Yeah, I know there's all that good, but do we see the destruction of human life now as well? This is more than just, this is more than just.
I think we really need to become more of a mindful society with regards to, the effects everything around us is having on our mental health and on making people not want to be here. And I know that suicide is such a taboo subject, for society, because like before you said, Jules, a lot of people might not understand, or think it's selfish to choose that route. And I just think that, there's so many factors. And Lucas, those people who are working in those conditions and jumping off the building because they feel they'd rather die than wake up every day and live like that, that's so extreme. That really is, that they've been made to feel that extreme, that they'd rather do that. And like sleep deprivation can cause insanity as well. That I've had friends that have suffered from sleep deprivation, and they have literally, it's caused them to be so depressed. It's really affected their mental health. And yeah, it's just there's so many elements to it all. And I have this really, I don't even know what the feeling is. It just makes me feel really sad at the thought of someone in that moment. They just feel like they have nothing left, and that there's no point in going on, and that they just think the only way out is to not be here anymore. I know I can't, but I feel like I just want to scoop all of those people up and just physically embrace them and somehow convince them and, acknowledge them and tell them they don't have to do that. But obviously that's not possible for me to do. I'm not, can't be everywhere every minute. So yeah, it does really affect me when I hear about it. And when I heard and read that headline this week about Japan, it really triggered me. I had to read more about it, and I really had to try and understand the whole situation. So yeah, it's such a taboo subject. It really is.
Yeah.
And I just want to say as well that if anybody that is listening to this podcast, like Jules said earlier, if you're feeling or having any thoughts like this, then please just reach out, because there will always be somebody that will listen and would rather listen and talk with you than to attend your funeral.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I know
quickly
everyone on here is happy to talk. You can find our Instagrams in the link below. Just drop us all a message. And there's also the Samaritans as well, which is
116123.
There we go.
If you're in the UK,
absolutely
116123. Call that number and someone will pick up. And a problem shared is a problem halved. So get it off your chest, get it out of your mind. So I am going to use this opportunity to explain a concept that I put together to help people have a better understanding of their life, because I think not only is lockdown playing an issue and addiction plays an issue and loneliness plays an issue, I also think that lack of fulfillment plays an issue. So for those that know, I have created a book called The 10 Pillars of Fulfillment, and what it is designed to do is to give the user a broader view of their life and where they are fulfilled and where they may not be fulfilled. So I'll explain the concept. And if you want to know more details, then yeah, click the links in the description and follow me on social media. The concept is called temple thinking. imagine yourself like a temple. The roof of the temple represents your mind and mental health. The 10 pillars of fulfillment are the supporting structure that keep the mind and mental health supported. Our pillars are strengthened by our values. For example, if you value trust, honesty, and loyalty, and one of the pillars is couples and intimate relationships, if that pillar doesn't embody trust, honesty, and loyalty, then unfortunately the pillar takes a crack, takes a hit, and may even fall down. That will have an effect on the mind and mental health. And as we go through life, we direct ourselves with our values, building our pillars. And going back to what I said earlier in the podcast, it's when we feel a sense of loss that the pillars may fall. So the book is created to give the user a broader perspective of their life and their pillars and understand where they're fulfilled and where they may not be. And then you get to choose as the user if you want to increase your levels of fulfillment in certain pillars or maximize on the pillars you currently have, because it's all about keeping that temple roof stable. And I'll quickly just show you, this is it right here, guys. Okay, self-help tool for you. So if you are struggling right now, please check out my book. It could be something useful for you. So yeah, check that out. Right. I'm going to take this to a new place. And when suicide was demonstrated because it was the only option. So at the Elite Thinking Club, we explore a lot. Remember when planes went into the Twin Towers? Remember 9/11? And there were people who chose to throw themselves out of the building because they felt like that was the only option left. That should put into perspective, you know, how it must feel like for someone going through that right now. Like, you're in a burning building and you'd rather throw yourself out of that building. Now, sorry if I've gone on a tangent there. I'm just exploring.
No, I think that's actually a great kind of metaphor, like, even though it really did happen.
Yeah.
Because the burning building is them living every day. And when they jump out of that window, out of that building, it's because they no longer want to stay in that burning building because they feel like they're going to burn to death anyway. So I will never forget the image of the guy, you know, his body falling.
Yeah.
And the tower. I will never forget that image. I remember seeing it, and I just remember thinking it's something I can't ever unsee. To know that he was at that point where he thought, I'd rather jump to my death than stay and in that building.
That's it. That is exactly it.
Yeah.
Also want to say, I know we're going through our time right now in this mass tech age, mass corporation age, and we've got a lot of things that contribute to our society, to our cultures, to our living, that I think it's so busy. But let's remember, I think suicide has always been quite a big thing in previous ages. Even in, like, say, medieval age, I think there was a lot of suicide. People would have been killing themselves. They would not have wanted to live. Now, I'm not sure about this answer, so putting it out there, are we the only animal that knows how to kill itself? And I say animal because we are all on this one earth as animals, but we're obviously advanced cognitively. Does that mean we're the only ones that know? Or do you think that when the pressure is too much, not just for us as humans, but they know to kill themselves?
I think there's two sort of
I'd
routes you
never
can
even
look at
thought
this.
about it.
I'd say it happens, we do it as well. You have sort of two paths of suicide. You've got the one, and I don't mean to pull any heartstrings or touch on a sensitive topic here, but you have one which is sort of a suicidal act. So you know that you are running into death. for example, going in front of like a drug lord or attacking a gang by yourself, and you know that it's a one-sided game, but then you've also got the side where, okay, I'm going to jump off a building now. And I think across animals, they will understand that, for example, wolves and dogs, they hunt together. So if they're isolated from a pack and they go and try and take something that's bigger than them, they know inside that that doesn't favor them, and that is sort of a suicidal act in a sense. But I don't think they'd be able to go, oh, for example, I'm going to fall off the side of this cliff or jump off.
I hear you. So imagine the wolf would rather, if it knew it was separated from the pack, it can comprehend that if I do that, I'm going to die. It knows that's a suicidal thing to do. However, it doesn't think, because it's separated from the pack, it hasn't eaten in a few days, to end its suffering, it should jump off a cliff. It would just keep living until it dies. Is that what you're saying, Lucas?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think there's always going to be that sense of survival, and it's just sort of built within. Obviously, we're more cognitive, and the society is a lot more developed than sort of a wolf pack. But
so I've got a question, and this is exploring again, guys. Is suicide an act of strength or cowardice?
See, I think you'd have to. I personally don't think I would have the strength to do it. I don't think I would be. So I guess I would see it as a strength.
It takes a lot of strength to throw yourself off a cliff.
I think mentally as well,
I'm referring back to the
and
wolf. Yeah, I'm referring back to the wolf. The
yeah,
wolf would rather fight till its last breath. It would rather starve to death than throw itself off a cliff, because I think it takes a lot of strength to throw yourself off a cliff. But then
absolutely. The
being a
build
human,
up and the
being
thoughts that you would
right,
have
right, but
leading to that act.
being a human, we're not wolves. I'm just saying, is the easy option suicide rather than facing?
I think a lot of this is where the
Tougher.
taboo is,
Yes.
because I think a lot of people see it as, they shouldn't have chose that option. They thought that was the easy way out, but we can never really say that they thought that was the easy way out, because we weren't them inside their mind. But I think sometimes we forget, or we don't realize how that must have been a massive thing for them to even consider,
Right.
let alone follow through.
Mm-hmm.
So for them to actually have thought about it,
Right.
considered it, built up to the act of doing it,
Yeah.
I think that takes a lot of strength
I was
to.
gonna say, yeah, it, regardless if it's cowardice or strength, it doesn't matter. The fact that
And
they're
I don't
thinking
even
about it,
think it
the fact that
matters
they're
how
doing,
somebody does it, whether it's, an overdose or throwing themselves in front of a train. Like I actually, in my 20s, I actually witnessed somebody on the Central Line in London throw themselves in front of a train. I was on my way to the Eurostar, was going off to Cannes Film Festival, really excited, and literally this guy was standing, not too far away from me. I just remember in the corner of my eye, seeing him sort of twitching, and his body language, and I just remember thinking, oh, he doesn't seem right. And within seconds of me thinking that, I just remember the tube coming down, and in the corner of my eye, he just went. And for about 10 seconds, I thought, no, that didn't happen. Then, there was a lot of screaming, and some of the transport staff with their walkie-talkies came down to the platform, and I actually had to give a witness statement to it because I was the nearest person, one of the nearest people to him. And I just remember that the rest of that day, my mind was blank, because I just thought, oh my gosh, if I'd have just gone over and said, are you okay? or just from picking up, just that split second when I thought about his body language, and then I literally felt like I didn't have time, but I felt guilty. I didn't even know the guy, and I felt guilty that I didn't say, is everything all right? Because that could have changed the course of what he was doing. That could have, the train could have come, and I could have distracted him for that second, and that might not have happened. And then he may have thought, oh wow, I was just about to do that, but she spoke to me. What am I thinking? Do you know what I mean? But then the people that I went, away with, and that I was working with the whole way on the Eurostar, said to me, you can't think like that. You didn't know him, and he obviously was at that point in his mind and his life that he did not want to be here.
Yeah.
And I
His
was trying
decision
to
was made.
process. Yeah. And I was just trying to process what led him. We all got up that day. We all got up, we all had breakfast, we all got dressed. And I just thought, he turned up there, I turned up there. We came from different places. And the difference is that at the end of the day, I was still alive and he wasn't. And the fact that when he got up that morning, he knew he was going to end his life, and he thought, I'm going to do it. He'd made the decision,
I was going to say,
and I think that takes a hell of a lot to know you're going to do that to yourself, and not know whether you're going to cause yourself pain, or just, you don't know. I don't know what happened.
I was going to say as well, like, no one wakes up one day and says, I'm going to kill myself today. I think that there is definitely a build up to it. There's especially something like jumping in front of a train.
Mm-hmm.
I think they must preempt that. They
Mm-hmm.
probably pick a time. They probably pick a day. And normally what I've heard or read once is that they tend to do it after a day when they got to see everybody they wanted to say goodbye to. Maybe a birthday, maybe a family meeting, even it's just really important. Even a Zoom call. If you're having a Zoom call with your family the next day, maybe just check in on everyone, because this is what I've heard they tend to do. They will tend to make sure they got a chance to have one last memory or say goodbye in their way. And then,
but people don't realize they're saying goodbye, do they?
Oh no, you'll never know that they're saying
No.
goodbye to you. They'll know because they've preempted, they've pre-planned. They know 9:30 on Monday morning, I'm jumping in front of that train because it's always there at 9:30. I've checked out the scene. I've seen where I'm going to do it.
I remember reading about a guy who threw a party. He threw a massive party, had all of his friends and family. He was the life and soul of the party. And that was no one knew, but that was his goodbye. And he was, he'd got all this bottle of champagne. He really went all out and had an absolutely massive mad party. And then the next day he killed himself. And everybody close to him couldn't comprehend why and what was that all about. And that was his goodbye. He wanted to feel all the love and be around them, and they had their last memory of him was that party.
Yeah. So,
and I remember thinking then he was, having fun running around the party, knowing he was going to do that.
Yeah.
And that he'd come to that decision inside. He felt he had to do that. It's so sad.
My uncle is a paramedic, and he obviously has a lot of gory stories, but the one that stands out for him most, he's told me before, is he was standing on a train track picking up pieces of a human.
Oh gosh.
And he told me this story, told me about it. I think it was like midday on a weekday. Wasn't even, it could happen anytime. And he said at the end, he said, I knew it was a guy because I had to pick up his penis.
Wow.
And it just goes to show that if someone does commit that act, it's not just direct family that are affected, because that's going to stick in his mind. Obviously, that's his job and he loves his job and he wouldn't change it for the world. But that is something that will always stick with him. And he had no idea who the person was that did it, or why they did it, or what pushed them to do it. So it does affect more people than just your direct family and friends.
And you think also of like the police officers that have to knock on the door of family members and relay the information that a member of their family has jumped off a bridge. You know, not far from where I live, there is a bridge that is quite well known for jumpers. You know, and like you say, it's the ambulance. You know, it's the you know, the Coast Guard and the police that have to deal with that.
Hats off to all.
All of the services, 100%. Yeah, 100%. It's really the knock-on effect. It's crazy. It really is.
Yeah,
it really is.
There is no solution to this episode, guys. We're not, you know, aiming to end up at any destination. We are simply just exploring how it makes us feel, and we would love to know how you feel about this particular topic. And yeah, so please, if you have a moment, just share it with us. Let us know. You know, and it doesn't have to be a comment, you know, a public comment. You can just message us, and you know, we will repeat. Probably have to do an episode like this again, guys. I think
Definitely.
one of the main things is talking about it. It's the first step to helping people feel like they're not alone. We should, like, back to the metaphor of the sun and the light and dark, the shade. Let's, you know, there's people in the shade and we need to acknowledge them. They could feel like they're not acknowledged. They could feel like they're worthless, but that's not true. Like, we're all capable of being so valuable to our human race. You know, it could have been it could have been anyone that woke up one day infected with depression, and then we wouldn't even have the telephone. You know, is it Edison?
And the thing is, it affects everybody. It affects all of us.
Or the light.
Or mental health is you know, it's everybody. It doesn't matter what job you have, where you live, whether you're rich, whether you're trying to be rich. You know, it doesn't matter. It will affect all of us at some point in our lives.
Yeah, I think we're going to stick a few links and numbers in the description, guys. So, you know, if you're hearing this episode, and it's important that you either share those links and those numbers for us, so we can get as much, you know, out there as possible. And also, if you are listening and you are battling right now, you are fighting for survival, then, you know, there's some useful links and numbers for you too. Right, guys, I am going to bring this episode to a close. I think, you know, we've hit some real valid and valuable points here and explored a lot. Our viewers got their minds thinking, and yeah, I don't think there's any real way to close this episode other than with a sincere peace and love. Everybody everywhere.
Peace and love.
Peace and love.
Speak to you later.
All right, guys. Bye-bye.
Take care.